Allen Ginsberg and I once sat down together, knee to knee, in two chairs facing, and I told him a dream I had about a strange Arabic figure that was pursuing me across the desert that I tried to avoid, that finally overtook me just before I reached the protective city. "Who is this?" said Allen. We pondered it. I proposed it was myself wearing a shroud. That wasn't it. Something, someone, some spirit was pursuing all of us across the desert of life and was bound to catch us before we reached heaven. Naturally, now that I look back on it, this is only death. Death will overtake us before heaven. The one thing that we yearn for in our living days that makes us sigh and groan and undergo sweet nauseas of all kinds is the remembrance of some lost bliss that was probably experienced in the womb and can only be reproduced, though we hate to admit it, in death. But who wants to die? More of this later. In the rush of events that took place, I kept thinking about this in the back of my mind. I told Neil, and he instantly recognized it as the mere simple longing for pure death. And because we're all of us never in life again, he rightly would have nothing to do with it. And I agree with him now. We went looking for my New York gang of friends. I have a tremendous and interesting gang of friends in New York. New York is such a crazy town. The crazy flowers bloom there too. We went to Ed Stringham's first. Ed Stringham is a sad, handsome fellow, sweet, generous, amenable. Only once in a while he suddenly has fits of depression and rushes off without saying a word to anyone. This night he was overjoyed. "Jack, where'd you find these absolutely wonderful people? I've never seen anyone like them." "I found them in the West." Neil was having his kicks. He put on a jazz record, grabbed Luann, held her tight, bounced against her with the beat of the music. She bounced right back. It was as simple as that. A real love dance. John Holmes came in with a huge gang. The New Year's weekend began and lasted 3 days and 3 nights. Great gangs got in the Hudson and swerved in the snowy New York streets from party to party. I brought Pauline and her sister to the biggest party. When Pauline saw me with Neil and Luann, her face darkened. She sensed the madness they put in me. "I don't like you when you're with them." It's all right. It's just kicks. We only live once. We're having a good time." "No, it's sad and I don't like it." Then Luann began to make love to me. She said Neil was going to stay with Carolyn. She wanted me to go with her. "Come back to San Francisco with us. We'll all live together. I'll be a good girl for you." But I knew Neil loved Luann. And I also knew Luann was doing this to make Pauline jealous. And I wanted nothing of it. Still in all, I licked my lips for the luscious blonde. Luann and Pauline were a couple of first-class beauties. When Pauline saw Luann pushing me into the corners and giving me the word and forcing kisses on me, she accepted Neil's invitation to go out in the car. But they just talked and drank some of the southern moonshine I left in the compartment. Everything was being mixed up and all was falling. I knew my affair with Pauline wouldn't last much longer. She wanted me to be her way. She was married to a mechanic who treated her badly. I was willing to marry her and bring her baby daughter and all. I mean, if she divorced the mechanic, but there wasn't enough money to get a divorce and the whole thing was hopeless. Besides of which, Pauline would never understand me because I like too many things and get all confused and hung up running from one thing to another till I drop. This is the night. What it does to you. I had nothing to offer anybody except my own confusion. The parties were enormous. There were at least 100 people at Herb Benjamin's basement apartment in the West 90s. People overflowed into the cellar compartments near the furnace. Something was going on in every corner, on every bed and couch. Not an orgy, but just a New Year's party with frantic screaming and wild radio music. There was even a Chinese girl. Neil ran like Groucho Marx from group to group, digging everybody. Periodically, we rushed out to the car to pick up more people. Lucien came. Lucien is the hero of my New York gang. As Neil is the chief hero of the Western, they immediately took a dislike for each other. Lucien's girl suddenly socked Lucien on the jaw with a roundhouse right. He stood reeling. She carried him home. Some of our mad newspaper friends rushed in the office with bottles. There was a tremendous and wonderful snowstorm going on outside. Al Hinkle made Pauline's sister and disappeared with her. I forgot to say, Al Hinkle is a very smooth man with women. He's 6'4", mild, affable, agreeable, dumb, and delightful. He helps women on with their coats. That's the way to do things. At 5 o'clock in the morning, We were all rushing through a backyard of a tenement and climbing in through the window of an apartment where a huge party was going on. At dawn, we were back at Ed Stringham's. People were drawing pictures, drinking stale beer. I slept with a girl called Rhoda, poor Rhoda, with all our clothes on, for no reason, just slept on the same couch. Great groups filed in from the old Columbia campus bar. Everything in life, all the faces of life were piling into the same dank room. At John Holmes, the party went on. John Holmes is a wonderful, sweet fellow who wears glasses and peers out of them with delight. He began to learn, yes, to everything, just like Neil at this time, and he hasn't stopped since. To the wild sounds of Dexter Gordon, Wardell Gray blowing the hunt, Neil and I played catch with Luann over the couch, and she was no small doll either. Neil went around with no undershirt, just his pants, barefoot, till it was time to hit the car and fetch more people. Everything happened. We found the wild, ecstatic Alan Anson and spent the night at his house in Long Island. Alan Anson lives in a nice house with his aunt. And when she dies, the house is all his. Meanwhile, she refuses to comply to any of his wishes and hates his friends. He brought this ragged gang of Neil, Luann, Al, and I and began a roaring party, and the woman prowled upstairs. She threatened to call the police. "Oh, shut up, you old bag," yelled Anson. I wondered how he could live with her like this. He had more books than I've ever seen in my life. 2 libraries, 2 rooms, loaded floor to ceiling, all 4 walls. Books such as The Explanation of the Apocalypse in 10 volumes. He played Verdi operas and pantomimed them in his pajamas with the great rip down the back. He didn't give a damn about anything. He's a great scholar who goes reeling down the New York waterfront with original 14th century musical manuscripts under his arm, shouting. He crawls like a great spider through the streets. His excitement blew out of his eyes in great stabs of fiendish light. He rolled his neck in spastic ecstasy. He lisped. He writhed, he flopped, he moaned, he howled, he fell back in despair. He could hardly get a word out. He was so excited with life. Neil stood before him with head bowed, repeating over and over again, "Yes, yes, yes." He took me in a corner. "That Alan Hansen is the greatest, most wonderful of all. That's what I was trying to tell you. That's what I want to be. I want to be like him. He's never hung up. He goes in every direction. He lets it all out. He knows time. He has nothing to do but rock back and forth. Man, he's the end. You see, if you go like him all the time, you'll finally get it."